you've actually seen a lot of ideas put out there and a lot of discussion, and I'm not sure we talk enough about ideas in our political arena anyway.
Well, I think we've learned that there's a liberal wing of the Republican Party. That's a surprise to me.
And it's still farther right than the conservative wing of the Democrat Party.
I think the amazing thing about the debates this time is that it's shown that, or it's allowed candidates who don't have money, who don't have the ability to stay with, for example, Mitt Romney, right, in terms of spending on advertising, to be right there in the race. And it's frankly maybe been one of an unofficial campaign finance reform act. It's allowed a candidate who had, well, all of the candidates that are left besides Romney were completely underfunded. And now here we are, the fourth or fifth primary in, and you've still got at least two strong contenders.
That's right. Go ahead, Scott. I know you're dying to say something.
Oh, really? I don't have too much to add to the previous discussion, except I'm excited about the possibility of having an ideological discussion between whoever the party representatives are finally. In a lot of ways, I hope that Newt Gingrich does win for the Republicans. And I don't hope that he wins because I have some sort of cynical idea about his ability to that President Obama can beat him more easily. What I really want is a national debate between conservative ideology and the so-called liberal ideology. I mean, in a lot of ways, Mitt Romney is Obama light, all right? And whether or not the Republicans will vote for him because he's so moderate and a Massachusetts politician is really up in the air. I'd really like to see a national debate between these two competing ideas. And perhaps what we could get back to is both parties working for what's in the best interest of the country rather than overall ideology, because we seem so divided.
Well, you brought up some good points, all of you. And again, I think, Scott, you brought up some good points. We've got to get back down to the basics of what's best for the country.
That's right.
Instead of it's us against them attitude that we seem to have developed.
Well, it's always about power and control, and you know, that's on both sides. It's not ever about an idea, it's about power and control. And, you know, we see that on a local level. You have a good idea and you ask why we can't do that, and nobody can agree with who's in control of it, who's in charge. And that's what's killing us.
What about the frosty meeting that President Obama had with the Arizona governor, Jan Brewer? What's your opinions of that meeting? And, you know, it was a fly-in and point-your-finger type meeting, and I'm out of here. So I don't know. You know, she'd been trying to get Mr. Obama down there for a long time to look at the problems, but he flew in and they got in an argument, it sounded like to me. But what's your opinion of what happened there?
Probably the first time that something like that has been caught on camera. It happens, I'm certain, a lot more than we know about it. Those conversations take place, I think, probably much more frequently than they're reported, and this time it just happened to be caught.
I think it's a sad commentary on America. I know that I listen to a lot of people on the news, a lot of talking heads, and I understand from listening to them that a lot of Republicans refuse to refer to President Obama as President Obama. They like to call him Obama, all right? Like it's pejorative, all right? It's similar to the situation where the President is giving the State of the Union address a couple of years ago, and one member of the Congress called him a liar. Now, that was unheard of in any time previous, in my mind. Now to have a governor point and wag her finger at the President of the United States, I think it's inappropriate. But I think that as a nation we can recover from it. But I do wish that, you know, I didn't agree with President Bush 100%, but I still refer to him as President Bush.
Well, let me weigh in here a little bit. I actually think that, first off, it was unprecedented for a president to say something that was outwardly a lie, and in subsequent time it has been shown that he in fact wasn't being straight about what Obamacare was doing. Now I agree it was improper for the congressman to not be able to control himself. But that's a very insulting thing to have to sit there and listen to. And as far as Governor Brewer, what happened on the tarmac actually shows that what she wrote in her book is true, because exactly what she wrote in her book as to how President Obama treated her and reacted towards her is exactly how he treated her and reacted towards her on the tarmac. So it proves she was true.
Then there's no reason to believe anything that Governor Brewer said.
Exactly.
She came out of that White House meeting she referred to in her book. I saw the video the other day. She came out in front of all the media and said that she had a warm and cordial conversation with the president.
Wait a minute.
So who should we believe?
Wait a minute. So if the listeners don't know, we're talking about Jan Brewer, the governor of Arizona, her book, Scorpions for Breakfast. Am I right?
Which has skyrocketed on Amazon since this whole incident.
Which tells you a little bit about how she got this thing going.
Well, she's not the one that got mad on the tarmac because she tried to hand the president a card of some of the list of problems on the border with immigration control.
I think what she did, she accused the Obama administration of turning a blind eye to illegal immigration in the book, right?
In the book.
Except that what we know is the Obama administration has deported more illegal aliens than George W. Bush ever dreamed of.
That's exactly right. Not only that, but come on. President Reagan was granted amnesty for illegal immigrants because it was a wise thing to do. We can't deport all these people, all right? President Reagan understood that, and he is sort of the bellwether for the modern conservative movement in America. Even he understood that you couldn't do that kind of thing.
But the problem was he got the amnesty part of his bill, but the Democrats never lived up to the control the border part of the bill, and we've learned that. President Reagan was honorable in that, but we didn't follow through with the control, so we're right back where we were with a huge number of immigrants that have come in illegally. We've got to do something about it. Now, we can do what Reagan did again if we can get an agreement from the other side of the aisle that we will actually do something to control the border.
But here we go again, embracing this hypocrisy of blaming the Democrats. It was the Congress as a whole that did it. Listen, we all were very prosperous in the 1990s under President Clinton, and then we were prosperous too under President Bush, George W. And the reason in part we were so prosperous was because we had all of this cheap labor that was out there available to work. And part of the reason we were so successful was because these administrations both turned a blind eye to the fact that we had this illegal immigration problem. Neither administration did that much about it because it benefited the country as a whole not to do anything about it. Now we've got sour economic times, and you can't get people to do the work that illegal immigrants will do in America still. Look what's going on in Alabama now.
Actually, the unemployment rate in Alabama has dropped statistically significantly faster since the law was passed than in all of the rest of the states in the country.
It's funny, we're talking about this. In Kansas City, they came out just recently. The Kansas Agricultural Secretary seeks a federal waiver for illegal immigrants. Basically, he's wanting to set up a way to go ahead and register the illegal immigrants so we can bring them in and put them to work milking cows and so forth out in Kansas. Anyway, he said that the employees and the employers would pay for that support program, ensuring that the state incurred no oversight costs. Now then, I know a farmer here in Charleston, Tennessee that uses immigrants. He signs up, he registers for them, and he brings them in, and they come in and work the farm. You know, what's the problem with these immigrants that we can't go through a system to try to bring them in if we need them to work and bring them in?
Nobody's opposed to that I know of.
Well,
I think the question is why we want to try to make them into scapegoats for every economic problem in the country, when it's just not true. We are inviting most of these folks in. We're supplying labor. They're coming here because people are hiring them. If they weren't hiring them, they wouldn't be here at all.
Supply and demand. It's pretty basic stuff.
Well, I mean, it's kind of amazing to me that we say we're okay with this. Actually, there is a federal law. There are rules on the book. And the Obama administration, through the Justice Department, is actually suing every state that simply tries to enforce the federal law, the system that's in place. How can you tell a state, hey, we're mad at you because you're enforcing the law that we passed?
How can you say that the administration that's deported more illegal immigrants than anyone in history already in just 3 years is soft on illegal immigration?
I didn't say they were soft on illegal immigration. I said that they're interfering with states enforcing federal law, which they are in court doing.
It's so typical. Giving lip service to an idea, drawing a line in the sand on it, when you know, in fact, that President Bush, George W., didn't do any more about it than President Obama has thus far. Hold on a second. We can rattle the sabers all we want, but the fact of the matter is, all right, is that I work in my office every day, and very, very often one of these illegal immigrants will get arrested. And what will happen is his employer, usually somebody involved in agriculture, will be sitting in my office right along with him and saying exactly this. Please help me keep him. Don't let them deport him. I want to get these charges cleared so I can keep him. He's the best man I have on my place. And it happens all the time.
It seems to me that there's got to be somewhere in here that all of the people can agree that there are certain things that have to happen. Number one, we do have to control the borders, and I don't think anybody sitting at this table or anybody sitting anywhere else in this country would disagree that the borders have to be controlled. I think it would not be living in reality if anybody said that the work that is done by folks who are here illegally does not contribute to the economics, both good and bad, of the country. We have to, I think, revamp our worker immigration to allow more people to come here to work. However, I frankly think that the mistake we're making is by trying to enforce the immigration laws with illegal workers on the illegal workers. We ought to be enforcing it on the employers. In my opinion, if an employer hires somebody illegal, then they ought to pay a penalty as well. And that, I don't know where that cuts to, but the bottom line is we've made this debate about only one segment of the problem. The biggest problem is they would not come, that is illegal immigrants, would not come if illegal employers weren't hiring them. And I don't think you can separate those two. And while I think we ought to have a generous policy to allow people to come here to work, right now we have it set up so that only unless you are a very highly specialized person, it's a difficult road to get here to come to work. That should not be the case. For 200 years, we have invited people who were craftsmen, who were artisans, who were people who just wanted to work hard and get ahead from other countries to be part of our nation. And we've asked them when they got here to become part of us. But it's not enough to say, in my mind, to say that we've deported more illegal aliens than any other administration, because frankly, that's not saying a whole lot. The numbers speak for themselves, and if anybody had taken a hard stance against this at any time, we would have seen much lower numbers than we do now. That's not the issue. The issue is not whether one administration has been better than the other. They've all been poor in this regard.
I concur with that 100%.
You know, one of the things that seems to be puzzling to me is the fact that a Social Security number cannot be followed through the government system. I mean, we've got all these government agencies, they all require the Social Security numbers, and none of them can confer with